Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into MB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, the legislative framework for oil exploration to soon be presented to Cabinet. The Prime Minister takes a personal stance on gay marriage. A man is sent to jail for marrying 2 women, plus a major track and field event other than Carifta slated for next month. We've got those stories and so much more coming up. I'm Paige McCartney, and MB12 starts right now. Welcome once again to MB12. On the heels of the government's recent announcement that exploratory oil drilling will occur ahead of the promised oil referendum, Minister of Environment and Housing Dorsett said discussions with Cuba regarding the environmental impact of oil drilling for the 2 bordering states has become a priority. Celeste Nixon has more.
With the Bahamas' neighbors to the south already drilling for oil, Environmental Minister Dorsett said the government is preparing to meet with a Cuban delegation shortly to discuss mutual environmental concerns.
In the next 14 days, a delegation from Cuba will be in the country for us to discuss environmental matters of mutual concern, having regard to the fact that the Russians are drilling just 12 miles away from our territorial waters. And when one considers the potential environmental impact to the Bahamas with respect to what they're doing, there is need for ongoing discussions between us and the Cubans.
Russian interests are currently drilling for oil in Cuban waters south of Guinchos Key in the Bahamas. Some have speculated that if Cuba finds oil near our borders, the Bahamas could have significant oil reserves. Dorsett said his ministry, along with the Office of the Attorney General, has made strengthening and modernizing petroleum regulations a priority. He said he expects to put draft legislation before Cabinet in a few weeks.
In my discussions with the Attorney General's office, I am of the belief that within the next few weeks, we should have a draft before Cabinet. It is a matter she is prioritizing, and her department is, and so in the next few weeks, I think we should have something before Cabinet for its consideration, and then thereafter, clearly, we will have public consultation.
Dorsett said environmentalists will also be consulted.
This is a matter of public interest. And so I certainly will be meeting with environmentalists, those who are interested, and discussing the regulatory framework.
According to Dorsett, the exploration data needed to verify if the country has commercially viable oil reserves will not be ready until the end of 2014. And as such, he doesn't expect a national referendum on the issue until mid-2015.
To date, the Bahamas Petroleum Company has reportedly invested more than $50 million in the Bahamas. However, most of that has been limited to 3D seismic testing and mapping. Dorsett said the government is continuing its discussions regarding the renewal of oil exploration licenses and associated financial terms. Reporting for MB12, I'm Celeste Nixon.
Well, for the first time in his political career, Prime Minister Perry Christie has made his personal stance on gay marriage public. And for the record, he's against it. Our Jasmine Bonamy has details in this report.
In recent weeks, just about everyone has commented about gay rights in the Bahamas, from politicians to priests to activists. And now Prime Minister Perry Christie is also weighing in on the issue. Prime Minister Christie says he does not believe in same-sex marriage. He went on to say that it's definitely not an issue on the government's agenda. When asked about the issue, here's how Christie reacted.
For me, it never arose. It's something I don't believe in. It's something that would never come up with me. It doesn't come up, but you know, it's a matter that one has to understand that exists in other countries next to us, and that it has become the law in some countries. We have to respect the laws of other countries, but when it comes to the Bahamas, there's no issue before my government about changing the laws with respect to marriage.
A few weeks ago, Chief Justice Sir Michael Barnett predicted that the Bahamian courts will soon have to address the question of same-sex marriage, Anglican Bishop Leish Boyd recommended to the Constitutional Commission last month that the Constitution be amended to reflect that no one should be discriminated against based on sexual orientation. Boyd, however, said he does not believe same-sex marriage should be included. But human rights activist Aaron Green later recommended to the commission that homosexuals should have the right to marry in the Bahamas.
I can only speak for myself personally on all matters to do with conscience. A government has to decide on it. I'm not going to speak for my government, whether it's capital punishment. I speak for myself, whether it's a matter of this kind. This happened when the laws were changed to allow homosexuality in private with consenting adults. And so, again, it was a matter of conscience of people voting. And so it's just one of those issues that have come up. I don't see it as an issue in the Bahamas today. I don't see it as an issue before my government. It most certainly is not an issue before my government.
Christie was referring to a vote by the United Nations to support the rights on the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community in recent weeks. Christie says it's simply not an issue for the Bahamas. In the House yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell said Christie's support of the resolution caused a ripple, perhaps even in their own party. On the local front, when asked if he would consider including the question on the government's upcoming constitutional referendum, Christie said the government would have to decide. Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.
Well, the discovery of mold in several public buildings has prompted the government to hire a Canadian firm to examine and get rid of it. According to Prime Minister Christie, the firm out of Toronto specializes in industrial cleanups. He said after weeks of testing, the firm has determined that the mold was not harmful. In one of the buildings, the mold was reportedly discovered in ceiling tiles in the recently relocated office of the Prime Minister. He adds that the discovery prompted officials to examine several other government buildings.
They found some form of tiles that they said was no threat whatsoever to us, but as a matter of caution, shall we say, even though I've had certified to my satisfaction that they represented no problem, They'd been looked at a year ago, a year before that, and I just said, listen, on an abundance of caution, right? Although small, although not a concern of those who looked at it before, let's just move it, because everything has to do with people who are housed in the building having confidence in their presence there.
Christie said while the mold is not harmful, it was decided that the best option was to remove it for the sake of employees who have voiced concerns. He adds that the firm has conducted a number of studies and is in the process of removing the mold. And police are confirming that a man drowned while swimming at Cabbage Beach today. The victim is a 34-year-old Bahamian and was a vendor on that beach. Officer in charge of the Paradise Island Branch ASP Mario Johnson said police got the call at about 1:15 this afternoon that the man went under after going for a swim in the rough sea. Johnson said tourists and locals attempted CPR after pulling the victim from the water. Johnson said the man had been employed at Cabbage Beach for quite some time, renting umbrellas and chairs to guests. The victim's identity is being withheld until his relatives have been notified. Another man drowned at Cabbage Beach over the weekend. Meteorologists have been warning about hazardous boating and beaching conditions since last week. Forecasters say large northeasterly swells will persist along the northern and eastern coastlines of the islands until at least Thursday. And a 57-year-old school teacher today admitted that he married a Jamaican woman in the Bahamas last year while he was still married to a woman in the United States. Rudy Charlton of Pine Barren Road pleaded guilty to bigamy before Magistrate Terrence Roll Davis. Charlton was ratted out by none other than his own wife of 34 years, Brenda Charlton, who on September 27th last year told police that her estranged husband had taken a new bride. Mrs. Charlton explained to police that she and Charlton were married in Detroit on July 1st, 1978. However, she told police that after her husband repeatedly stepped out on her with other women, the relationship soured and he returned to the Bahamas. But Mrs. Charlton found out that her husband married Mitchell Donnellan Thompson on August 22nd last year. Police checked the registrar and confirmed that the Charltons had never divorced and subsequently arrested Mr. Charlton. Charlton, who teaches grades 4, 5, and 6 at a local public school, didn't bother wasting the court's time today. He said it's all true. His lawyer, Michael Kemp, begged the court's indulgence in asking for a probation report before sentencing, as he fears Charlton might have a mental condition. He explained that Charlton was a church-going man who backslid and engaged in certain pleasures of the flesh and subsequently lost his head. Magistrate Roel Davis granted the request and gave the Department of Social Services 6 weeks to evaluate Charlton. However, they'll have to do it behind bars. Roel Davis ordered Charlton remanded to Her Majesty's Prison until his next court appearance on May 9th.